They said love was patient, but no one warned Chike that patience could hurt this much. Every dawn, while Rooster still argued with the darkness, he pushed his wooden wheelbarrow to the market square, barefoot, hungry and smiling. The wheel creaked like an old prayer. He wasn't pushing goods, he was pushing hope, the kind that wore thin but refused to die. At home, Neka's mirror was her altar. She could spend hours brushing her wig while their children chased rats for fun. Her lips glistened with oil, her laughter loud only when neighbors passed by. To the world, she was a fine wife married to a lazy man. Only Chike knew the truth. He worked 3 jobs to keep her in those shiny shoes. One afternoon the sun was cruel. Sweat turned to salt on his brow as he carried sacks of cassava for strangers. Then he heard a voice behind him. "Is that not Neka's husband?" He turned just in time to see her, powdered, perfumed, hiding behind a stall. "Neka," he called, smiling. She froze, adjusting her wrapper like shame was crawling up her spine. A woman beside her laughed. "Ah, so that's your husband," Neka hissed. "God forbid. My husband is at home resting. This one." She waved him away. "I don't know him." The words fell heavier than the sack he carried. Still he smiled weakly, bowed and walked away. That night, when he returned home limping, she took every naira from his pocket. "You're too slow," she said. "Tomorrow try to push faster. We need money." He wanted to speak, to tell her how much it hurt, but his tongue feared the sound of breaking love. Days became weeks. His palms blistered, his clothes tore, yet he kept working. He cleaned gutters, packed refuse, fetched water for strangers. Each time he brought home his sweat, she turned it into wigs and lace. The children's bellies swelled with hunger, but Neka's smile never faded. She loved herself more than her family, and Chike's silence made it easy. One night, she came home late from the market, her eyes bright with an idea that smelled of trouble. "Chike," she whispered, "there's a woman who carries plenty money. Tomorrow when she comes, just distract her and take small from her bag. Nobody will know." He looked at her, heart trembling. "Neka, you want me to steal?" She crossed her arms. "If you don't, then maybe you don't need a wife. The children and I can find someone who can provide." He couldn't sleep that night. The stars watched him pace like a prisoner already serving time for a crime he hadn't committed. When dawn came, he washed his face and whispered, "Lord, forgive me if I choose sin for love." Outside, the cock crowed again, louder this time, as if warning him that love built on fear would soon collapse. The market that morning smelled of smoke and greed. Traders shouted prices, children ran barefoot between baskets of peppers, and Chike stood at the corner, heart pounding like a drum of war. Neka's words echoed in his mind. "If you don't do it, I'll leave." He watched the woman his wife had described, tall, wrapped in gold and laughter, her purse dangling carelessly from her wrist. He had carried her goods many times before. She always smiled, always tipped him extra. Today, his hands shook as he picked up her sack of yam. She smiled again. "Ah, Chike, you always appear when I need you." He forced a smile back, but guilt already dug its nails into his chest. As they reached her car, he saw the purse. For a moment, the world went silent. No hawkers, no chatter, just the sound of his breathing and his heart tearing in two. He could almost hear Neka's voice whispering, "Do it for us." So he did. His fingers slipped the purse from her bag like a thief's shadow. But shadows can't hide from the sun. "Thief!" a voice screamed. Before he could blink, hands were everywhere, pulling, slapping, tearing. The market turned into a storm of curses and stones. "I'm not," he tried to explain, but the mob wasn't listening. They tied him with a rope made for goats and dragged him through the sand. The woman he stole from stood frozen, shock in her eyes. "I know this man," she said, trembling. "He works hard. There must be a mistake." But the damage was done. The police van arrived before mercy could. When they took him away, his last sight was Neka standing by a stall, pretending not to know him. Her eyes met his for half a second, cold, distant, almost relieved. At the station he confessed everything. "I did it for my wife and children," he said quietly. "She told me to." The officer laughed. "So now you blame your wife for your foolishness." He signed the papers, head bowed. Weeks turned to months in court. Nneka never appeared, not once. When the judge pronounced 5 years imprisonment, Chike didn't cry. He only whispered, "Tell my children I love them." In prison, time was a wound that never healed. The first night he shared a cell with 8 men, the air thick with sweat and regret. They mocked him for being silent, for praying too much, for believing his wife would visit. But he held on to faith like a dying man clutches air. Every visiting day he washed his face, straightened his torn shirt, and waited by the gate, watching others embrace family, hearing laughter that wasn't his. Days passed. Weeks folded into years. Still he waited. He imagined his children's voices growing deeper, their faces changing. He pictured Nneka realizing her wrongs and coming with tears to beg him for forgiveness. But no one came. Then, one morning, the prison warden called his name. "Chike Abika, you're being released. 3 years served. Good behavior." He blinked, unsure if he had heard right. The world outside the gates looked brighter than heaven itself. He stepped out with nothing but his faith and the memory of a woman who once made him steal love from the wrong place. The morning Chike walked out of the prison gates, the world felt too bright. He squinted at the sun like a man seeing heaven for the first time. Freedom tasted strange, sweet on his tongue but heavy in his chest. He touched the rough wall behind him, whispered a prayer of thanks, and promised himself that the first thing he'd do was go home, to Nneka, to his children, to the life that had kept him breathing through the darkness. But before the journey, he stopped by a small flower stand near the bus park. The old woman there smiled as she saw him staring at the white hibiscus. "My son, for who?" she asked softly. "For my wife," he said, his eyes lighting for the first time in years. "I want her to see me and remember that I never stopped loving her." The woman tied the stems with a red ribbon. "Then go quickly before they fade," she said, handing him the bouquet. He held the flowers to his chest all the way on the bus. Each stop felt like a heartbeat closer to joy. He imagined the scene, Nneka's gasp when she opened the door, his children running to him shouting "Papa," and her tears washing away the years of pain. He rehearsed his lines quietly, smiling at the window reflection of a man finally coming home. But when he reached his street, something inside him stilled. The walls were freshly painted. The smell of home cooking was gone. At their old door stood a man he had never seen. "Good afternoon," Chike said politely. "Please. Does Nneka Abika still live here?" The man shook his head. "No, they moved long ago. Maybe 3 years. Do you know where?" "I know no," the man replied, closing the gate gently. Chike just stood there, the flowers drooping in his hand. He sat by the gutter outside the house until the sun went down, watching people pass as though he were invisible. When darkness came, he placed the flowers beside him and whispered her name again and again. The next morning he began to search. He asked every trader, every Okada man, every woman who might have known her. Days turned to weeks. His sandals tore apart, still he searched. Then one dusk, while he sat by a roadside fire, an old market woman drew close. "Forget her, my son," she said softly. "She followed a rich man. Moved to the city with your children. Told everyone you died in prison." Chike froze. The fire flickered, wind blowing ashes like his scattered dreams. "Are you sure?" he whispered. She nodded. "The man treats her well, but she calls herself another name now. A new life." He couldn't speak. The world dimmed around him. He stood up slowly, voice shaking. "Do you know where they live?" The woman hesitated. "Far away. In Lekki. A place you cannot afford to visit." "I will find her," he said. Even if I walk barefoot to the end of Lagos, I'll find her. That night, he walked until his feet bled. He prayed, cried, and cursed in turns. Yet through all the pain, one thought remained. He still loved her. Maybe love was madness. Maybe it was mercy. But for Chaik, it was the only reason to keep breathing. Morning sunlight poured through silk curtains, brushing across the soft skin of Nneka Dike, the woman the whole neighborhood now called Madam Peace. She stretched lazily on the king-sized bed as her husband's voice echoed from the hallway. "My love, breakfast is ready. I made your favorite." She smiled, a slow, satisfied smile, and reached for her phone on the bedside table, the gold-plated one her husband had bought her, just because. Her life was a dream sculpted from lies. The mansion gleamed with glass staircases, marble floors, and paintings imported from Paris. Her wardrobe was a rainbow of luxury. Lace from Dubai, perfumes from France, wigs that cost more than Chaik's yearly earnings back then. She no longer walked to the market. Groceries were delivered. The cook handled everything. The woman who once hid her face in shame at the mention of her husband's poverty now hosted brunches with women who praised her fairy tale marriage. Madam Dike, they'd call her, their laughter laced with envy. She'd blush modestly and reply, "It's all God's grace," never once mentioning the man who had once carried her dreams on his bare back. Her husband, Mr. Dike, was everything she'd ever wanted, rich, kind, and blindly devoted. He treated her children as his own. "Poor woman," he'd often say. "Losing your first husband so young. You're stronger than most." She'd smile, eyes glistening with crocodile tears. "I just thank God for sending you." And he'd kiss her forehead gently, whispering, "No more pain under my roof." But sometimes when she was alone, guilt would crawl up her throat like smoke. She'd stand by the window and see street cleaners or gatekeepers outside, their sweat glistening under the sun, and her chest would tighten. Once, she saw a man pushing a wheelbarrow past the estate wall and swore she heard her name on the wind. She had run inside, trembling. "Chaik is gone," she told herself. "He's dead. He's gone." But her heart never fully believed I. By the time Chaik reached Lekki, his body was weak, but hope still burned inside him. He had walked for days, guided only by one name, Nneka. The woman who once denied him, the mother of his children, the reason he endured prison walls. In his hand he clutched a torn paper, the address an old market woman had whispered to him beside a fire. The houses here stood proud and tall, polished like mirrors of another world. He stopped before one, house number 12, its gate painted gold, flowers blooming along the fence. His heart began to race. "This must be it," he whispered, brushing the dust from his shirt before knocking. Moments later, a tall man in a crisp white shirt opened the door. He was confident, calm, the very image of success. "Yes, good evening," the man said politely. "Can I help you?" Chaik bowed slightly. "Good evening, sir. Please, I'm looking for my wife and children. Someone directed me to this address." The man frowned. "Your wife?" "Yes, sir. Her name is Nneka Obika. She has 2 children, Chidera and Amara. I was told they live here." The man's face softened with pity. "I'm sorry, my friend. You must have the wrong address. There's no one here by that name." Chaik blinked rapidly, his heart sinking. "Are you sure, sir? Maybe she changed her name. But I know her. She's my wife." The man shook his head. "I've lived here for years with my family." "You're mistaken." Seeing the pain in Chaik's eyes, the man sighed. "You don't look well. Have you eaten today?" Chaik smiled weakly and shook his head. "No, sir." Came straight from the road. "I've been searching for them." "Sit down," the man said kindly. He disappeared inside and returned with a loaf of bread and a bottle of water. "Here, eat." Life must have been hard. Tears gathered in Chaik's eyes. "Thank you, sir. God bless you. You will never lack." The man gave a small, humble smile. "My name is Mr. Dike. I'm not sure I can help you find your wife, but my previous gateman just retired. If you don't mind simple work, I can give you the job. At least you'll have food and a roof. Chaik dropped to his knees, overwhelmed. Sir, may heaven bless you. You've saved my life. Dyke gently helped him up. No need to kneel. You can start tomorrow. For tonight you may sleep by the gate if you wish. My wife and kids are away on vacation but will be back by the weekend. I'll introduce you then. Gratitude choked Chaik's voice. Thank you, sir. Thank you. He sat quietly by the gate, eating slowly, every bite tasting like a miracle. For the first time in years, he felt a little hope returning to his chest. He looked up at the grand house, its windows glowing warm and bright, and whispered, "Maybe God still remembers me after all." He didn't know that the man who fed him was married to the very woman he came searching for, nor that the family returning that weekend carried his own blood. The weekend came faster than the beating of a guilty heart. Chaik woke before dawn, swept the compound twice, washed the cars until they gleamed, and polished the gate till it reflected the morning sun. Every small task felt holy, a way of thanking God for the mercy of a new beginning. He didn't know what waited behind the coming sunset. By evening, the air smelled of fresh rain and perfume from passing cars. Then at last a horn sounded outside the gate. He rushed forward, heart racing, and swung it open. A sleek SUV rolled in. "Daddy!" Two small voices screamed as they jumped out and ran to the man beside the passenger door, Mr. Dyke. He laughed, gathering them into his arms. "My babies! Did you miss me?" Behind them, a woman stepped down gracefully, adjusting her sunglasses, her laughter soft and confident. Chaik froze. Time stopped. The scarf she wore, the tilt of her chin, the rhythm of that voice. Everything struck like thunder. He blinked hard, his throat tightening. Then, without thinking, he whispered, "Neka." She turned sharply, eyes widening for the briefest second before panic masked her face. Mr. Dyke smiled proudly, wrapping an arm around her. "Honey, meet our new gateman. He's a hard-working man I found a few days ago." Chaik's lips trembled. "Eneka, it's me. Look at me." Mr. Dyke laughed lightly. No, her name is Grace. You must be mistaken." But Chaik stepped forward, tears already breaking loose. "Sir, please, that woman is my wife. Those children, they're mine." Silence sliced through the compound. Neka's face drained of color. She tried to speak, but the words stumbled. Honey, I don't know this man." Chaik dropped to his knees. "Neka, you left me in prison. I stole because you begged me to. I suffered for you. I came out and searched everywhere. And you told them I was dead." Mr. Dyke stepped back slowly, disbelief tightening his jaw. "You told me your husband was killed years ago." Neka reached for him, voice breaking. "Please, my husband, I can explain. He's lying. He's just some mad man." "Enough!" Dyke roared. "How could you? I took you in, loved your children, trusted every word you said." The children clung to their mother's dress, confused and crying. Chaik looked at them, his soul shattering. "My babies. It's Papa. Don't you remember me?" But they only stared, lost between two worlds. Mr. Dyke sighed heavily and rubbed his forehead. "Everyone calm down. I need to think." He looked at Chaik, still kneeling. "You stay here. Let me speak with my wife privately." He turned and walked into the house, motioning for Neka to follow. The conversation behind the door. Inside the corridor, the air was tight with silence. Neka turned sharply, whispering harshly, "What are you doing, bringing up the past in front of him? Are you trying to ruin me?" Outside, Chaik waited, tears streaming, but her words carried through the partly open door. "I lost everything because of you," he said softly from the doorway. "You lost nothing," she hissed. "You were a weak man. You couldn't give me the life I deserved. Look at me now. I have what I want, and you can't change that. Not even for our children." Chaik's voice cracked. "Our children are fine," she snapped. "You have no place here. Leave before I scream and they throw you back in prison." She didn't know that Mr. Dyke had stopped halfway up the stairs. He heard every word. He stepped back into the hallway slowly, his voice low but trembling with fury. "I was right not to trust that story," he said. Nneka froze. "Honey, please, I was scared." "Scared of the truth," he barked. "You lied to me, used me, made me raise another man's children. Do you even know what you've done?" Her knees gave way. "Please, forgive me. I didn't mean." "Enough," he thundered. "Pack your things. Leave my house tonight. And you," he turned to Chaik. "I'm sorry for your pain. I didn't know." Chaik bowed his head, voice breaking. "Thank you, sir. I don't hate you. You showed me kindness when I had nothing." Mr. Dyke nodded slowly. "Sometimes kindness is how God exposes lies." As Nneka wept on the floor, the children stood frozen by the stairs, too young to understand the storm that had just ended their mother's paradise. Chaik turned away, his tears falling freely as he whispered, "I found them, Lord, but not the way I hoped." Night fell heavy over the estate. The laughter that once echoed from the mansion had died into whispers. Mr. Dyke stood by the balcony, his arms folded, eyes fixed on the streetlights as if searching for answers that wouldn't come. Inside, Nneka sat on the cold tiles of the living room, her fine clothes soaked with tears. The children slept restlessly in the next room, their world suddenly split in two. "Please, honey, don't send me away," she sobbed as Dyke descended the stairs. He didn't look at her. "I'm not your honey. I was your second chance, and you buried it with your lies." "I was desperate," she cried. "I suffered with him. I just wanted a better life." He turned sharply. "And you found it, at the cost of your soul." She tried to touch his hand, but he moved away. "Leave before dawn. I'll keep the children till I decide what's best for them. But you will not spend another night under my roof." She opened her mouth to beg again, but his tone made her stop. "Go," he said quietly. "Don't make me lose the last bit of pity I have left." Outside the gate, Chaik sat alone on the pavement, staring at the house. His eyes were swollen, his hands trembling, his heart torn between pain and peace. He had prayed for years to find his family, and he had, just not the way he imagined. He looked up at the sky and whispered, "Lord, I asked for a reunion, and you gave me revelation. Maybe that's what I needed." When the gate creaked open, footsteps approached softly. It was Mr. Dyke. He handed him a small brown envelope. "There's some money inside," he said. "Find a place to stay. I'll take care of the children for now. When they're old enough, they'll know the truth." Chaik shook his head weakly. "I don't want your money, sir. You've done enough. You gave me bread when I was starving. You gave me truth when I was blind. That's enough blessing for me." But Dyke insisted, pressing the envelope into his hand. "Keep it. Not as charity but as respect. You are a better man than most of us." Chaik bowed deeply. "May God reward you." He turned and walked away, his figure small under the flickering streetlight. As dawn broke, Nneka stumbled out of the mansion carrying a single suitcase. Her jewelry clinked softly with every shaky step. When she reached the gate, she saw Chaik sitting on a bench across the road. Their eyes met. She hesitated, pride and shame wrestling in her chest. He stood slowly and walked toward her. For a moment she thought he'd shout, curse or spit, but he didn't. Instead he said quietly, "I forgive you, Nneka." Her lips trembled. "After everything I did." He nodded. "Because hate won't rebuild what's already broken. You destroyed me once, but if I hate you, I destroy myself again." She burst into tears, falling to her knees, but he simply turned and walked away. His steps slow, steady, peaceful. Nneka watched him go, realizing that the man she once called worthless had become the one thing she'd never be again, free.